you can have a life that looks right and still feel completely disconnected. So what if the problem isn't your life, but your connection to yourself? And what if becoming isn't about changing who you are, but finding your way back? This is the Delay the Binge Podcast. And if you're new here, this show is about understanding the patterns that keep you stuck and learning how to pause long enough to choose something different. And today's conversation is a powerful example of what that actually looks like in real life. Because what if your life looks right, but feels completely wrong? Jo Weatherford is back on the show. And if you heard our first conversation, you already know she doesn't stay on the surface, y'all. Her work in addiction and recovery goes deep, helping people understand their patterns, take real ownership, and actually create lasting change. Jo, welcome back.
Thank you so much. What a great intro. I appreciate that.
Well, can't have a great intro without having a great person on the other end. So before we get into any of this and go really deep, I'd actually love to start with where you are right now and what you're most focused on in your work and life these days. You know, how the heck are you?
Beautiful. Yeah, well, I'm really good. I am busy creating a life that looks great on paper and also feels great to be inside of. So, business-wise, I am still working very hard to get Schick Shadle Treatment Center reopened. That's the treatment center that I got sober at. It's aversion therapy. And so I'm working with a business partner to make sure that that's available again. So work is that. Personal life, my partner and I are working on creating a new life, a baby. And so really
oh my
looking
gosh, congratulations.
family. So yeah, it's just a beautiful apex moment for me, you know. And I'm glad to be here, but I'm still in the middle. It's like the treatment center hasn't opened yet. I'm not pregnant yet. So it's like that in between space where nothing's hit yet. And it can be kind of a sucky space too sometimes.
But you're on the path, right? You're on the path of reaching it, and you know what it is you want.
That clarity is so special.
Yeah, it is. It is so much. And a lot of times, a lot of women especially don't even realize they have no idea what they really want. So one of the reasons I'm very excited to have your expertise today is because this series is really about becoming, not in the way people usually think about it, but what it actually looks like to come back to yourself. And I think your story and your work speaks to that in a very real way. When you hear the word becoming, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's interesting because my mind goes to more of a butterfly going through this transformation, right? Where something is becoming its next evolution. But what I feel when I hear becoming is a coming home. So it's what I imagine in my mind and what I feel in my heart are actually two very different processes. But the coming home is, I think, it's like the payoff of doing the transformational work. So even though they are two different processes, they all, they are interconnected and intertwined into that coming into ourself.
It's like a busy highway with all these paths, right? And we somehow end up back to where we should hopefully be. I love that. The butterfly. That's a great visual.
I think we're coming home to what we've always been as well. Like I can remember this moment. I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and it was, in front of this rose bush. And it was kind of like I was going through a lot in my life, which sounds crazy as a 4 or 5 year old, but a lot was changing for me. And it was the moment I kind of felt my innocence shatter. And then my ego came on board. You know how kids are usually, they're just in flow and they're just free. Well, it was the moment, and I actually was conscious of it, of like, I'm in a new world now. Now, all of a sudden, I care what people think about me, and I feel like I need to perform. And it was very interesting. I felt the juxtaposition of I'm innocent and free to I need to perform and prove my worth. And so when I think about becoming as well, when I think about that coming home, it's like a return to that innocence. It's a return to that flow. It's a return to being rather than doing. It's a freedom that we are creating because we're reestablishing the rules.
That is that's profound. I like that a lot. You know, just in case we have listeners that are new to Jo Weatherford, and maybe didn't listen to the first conversation, can you just give us a brief summary of your past life and how it brought you to where you're at today? I know that's a lot, but I think you don't have to go over all of it. I just want to revisit it a little bit.
Yeah, just kind of Cliff Notes version. What happened when I was 4 and a half was I was molested, and was definitely a very pivotal moment in my life, and established a lot of the way I thought about myself, my sexuality, my worth, love. That kind of carried into my adolescent years, which I then became very promiscuous, drinking heavily at age 12. I mean, I was a full-blown alcoholic by 12. But I was always a high performer. And so I could look really good on paper, and I could convince the world I was great. I played junior Olympic softball. I graduated when I was 16. So academically, sports, I always really excelled. Um, I went to school for journalism. I wanted a career in broadcasting, but kind of got sucked into the modeling world and went that path instead, and found myself in rehab at age 24 and just very broken, eating disorder, horrific alcoholism. I got sober for a little while and was able to um, pivot my life and went to graduate school to become a therapist, but I'm still dealing with a lot of my own demons, and talk about just an unbelievable experience. Here I am, like, as this addiction expert, but I'm also battling my own. And I'm very good at what I do, but also the biggest hypocrite on the planet. It was just such it was crazy because when I decided to go down this path, I was sober, right? And I think a lot of people are, and they're like, oh, I'm going to help people. And your demons come back, and then you've already committed and you're working with people. It was unbelievable. And so I was like, I need to do something now that's going to work. And that's when I went to Schick treatment. 10 days later, I walked out of there and I never wanted to drink again. And that was 14 years ago. And so I've worked in some capacity in the addiction field ever since. I worked at the University of Nevada, Reno. I taught counseling courses there for 12 years. I helped create a lot of the educational drug prevention programming there. And I work with clients one-on-one now. So I moved to Mexico, sold everything during COVID. I've had like such a wild, I feel like I've lived, lives. Yeah, but here we are. And I'm really excited. Yeah. Now this new path of like, I pray that I will be a mother, like a journey I never thought I'd be on. So.
It's truly my favoriteest thing in life so far. Well, other than being a granny, that may trump the mom. I don't know, but first, before I go any further, I just want to commend you, because not everyone can take horrific or traumatic events in their life and use it to do good things. And you constantly want to help people. And my whole message of my book, my first memoir, was your past doesn't define you, it prepares you. And it's all about using pain for purpose, struggles as stepping stones. Because really, if you can't make it worth happening, that's very difficult to deal with. But man, you have just done phenomenal work using what happened to you.
Oh, thank you.
So,
I mean, I think there's something to be said about people when they haven't had an easy life. It's like when things are just going right and you're able to create amazing things, that's so powerful. I admire it so much and it's inspiring. But it's the people when things not going right that keep going and they find a way. That to me is just unbelievable. And I'm sorry, there is a woodpecker. It's
and
funny.
that's a woodpecker. I thought maybe it was the UPS man.
No, I'm sober on a 26-acre vineyard in the middle of nowhere, but we have this farmhouse, this wooden farmhouse. And so are lots of fun little animals. And so we're just going to roll with it. And I'm going to go into a quieter room.
Yes.
Speaking of adversity.
He can be part of our chat. I don't mind. I love woodpeckers. They are annoying though at times because they always are present when you don't want them to be.
They really, yeah, I'm like, seriously, I am doing something, buddy, but they don't care. So yeah, the people that can persevere through adversity, I just love it. I was listening to a podcast earlier today and somebody said the Kobe Bryant quote where he's like, he had a horrible game and he's talking about how it feels when you just can't click into that next level. Nothing's working. It's just not going right. He goes, but what I know about me is I will always find a way. And he said, if I ever get into a fight with a bear, pray for the bear. And it's like, God, I love that. I love that grit and the tenacity, which is like, no matter what comes at me, I will come out on top. And I love hearing that message. And so I want to share it. And I love being able to say that it does not matter what happened to you. You can absolutely create whatever life you choose.
And lean into it. That's the second time I've heard that phrase about the bear. So funny. Maybe there's some power telling me, get ready for the bear, Pam, or something. I don't know. It's the second we've talked about this bear quote, but I think that's very powerful and it's very true. I mean, everyone thinks, oh, you're so resilient. Oh, how did you ever come back from that? But it's in all of us. You just have to figure out how to tap into it, So when you think about your life back then, when all this was happening, what stands out to you now that maybe didn't stand out at the time?
What's interesting about being caught in my addiction was I wasn't resilient. I didn't have hope or faith. I didn't know if I'd ever get out of it. I was just like, a part of me knew I just need to stay alive. Like if I can just keep myself alive, maybe a miracle will happen. And that was the level of consciousness and trust and everything I was operating at. And I think that that's a really powerful message because when we talk about resilience and grit, a lot of time people are so scared because they're like, well, I don't believe in myself. Like my self-trust is shattered. Nobody has hurt me more than I've hurt me, right? So how am I supposed to believe in myself and develop this grit? And I just want to say sometimes you don't need to. Like God is going to do for you what you can't do for yourself. Whatever, it doesn't need to be a man with a gavel on a or on a cross, like your version of God. This love, this energy that is beyond all of us. It's like sometimes that will step in and you don't need hope or faith. So even if you're in like the absolute depths of hell, like it can still happen for you. And so just keep yourself alive because healing is always possible, as long as we're still here.
Thank you so much for saying that. I am very spiritual as well. And even when I was going through the worst time in my life, I believed in God, but I just was very angry at him. But, a lot of people are not. A lot of people aren't spiritual, but they need to understand that the brain just from the neuroscience of everything. The brain is all about patterns, and it's all about survival. Your lower brain, that's all it thinks about is helping you survive. And so when a lot of people say, I don't know how I got through that, but I did, well, it's because the body is an amazing thing. And so is the brain is incredible, and it will help you cope and survive. But sometimes those behaviors, can lead you down the wrong path. And, that's what we study here on Delay the Binge. That's what the brain's doing. It's trying to appease you temporarily, you know. But it's a wonderful thing to look into, and I'm just obsessed with the neuroscience of things lately. But spiritually, that's what I'm all about too.
I love what you said that because when you think about the brain, that's that's why mindset is so critical because the brain is wired for survival, not for happiness. So when we need it to be wired for survival, it's going to kick in and do everything that it can to support us, which is amazing. We don't even have to try. It's like you don't need to tell your heart to beat. You don't need to ask your eyes to blink. Like nature is just doing its thing all the time and it's amazing. And we need to be cautious of it, like you said, because we tap into that reptilian just survival instinct all the time, and that does get us in trouble. And so that's where, for me, it's like we need to be diligent. What are my thoughts? What is my intention? The why behind it all, so that our life doesn't become mechanical on autopilot for survival. Take, take, take. That's, a very different mentality than really we are so fortunate. I know a lot of people are going through hard things, and I'm not discounting war or domestic violence or a lot of the atrocities that are happening all the time. But the reality is, for most of us, like in this moment, we are safe. In this moment, there is no threat. In this moment, we are okay. And we need to give our time, and energy to that relaxation and gratitude of the peace, which actually we are afforded, way more than any other time in history. And so it's like, it's that balancing act.
Oh, the dreaded balance. It's always elusive for me. I always try to find it. But the brain the frontal part of the brain is your thinking part, but it goes offline when the lower brain's in charge. And like you said, that's when we get in trouble. But the pause or taking a moment to reflect, to bring clarity, brings the front part of your brain back online so that you can actually assess and think, okay, what am I really thinking right now? Why am I doing this thing? Because we know what we should and shouldn't do, but we still do it. Like, what is that?
It's back to basics so often. Even yesterday, I had an experience where I felt myself get hijacked. My cortisol, my adrenaline dumped, your blood is in your fingertips, you're ready to run, you're not present, you're out of your body, your nervous system is completely offline. And I was like, okay, what's 5 things that I can see? What's 4 things that I can feel? What's 3 things that I can it's so like 101 basic, but sometimes we just got to get back to that. And I'm doing this little exercise and then I almost started yeah, I was, like, laughing at myself. I'm like, "Seriously? This is where we're still at?" But then it worked, and then I was like, "Oh, thank God. Okay, maybe these dumb little exercises, actually really help and aren't dumb at all."
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm constantly using my whole approach, my whole framework, because especially my grown kids, they're like, "Mom, are you going to delay the binge today? Because you need to take a pause."
Well, and that's
So,
really so
was
much
there
of the work is just being able to stop and not do anything for a minute and get present. But it's so incredibly difficult, and then we have those moments sometimes where it's like, you have that moment of interruption where you could do it different, and it's like, "Nah, I just don't wanna really throw a temper tantrum right now," but at least there's some awareness, which I think is really just the main goal.
Well, and people do a lot of things. Like I spoke with someone the other day on the show, and she said she lives in the woods, in a beautiful cabin, but she said, "I just go out into the woods and I lay on the grass with my arms spread out and just look up at the sky." Sometimes it takes 5 minutes, sometimes just a few seconds, but I just ground. They talk a lot about grounding, and it's so funny because the other day there was a man in a business suit walking down our road here in the neighborhood barefoot. He was just walking.
I love
I
it.
said, "Well, he must be stressed."
Yeah. Let the earth take it. Yep. Ground and God, there's so much wisdom to all of it. We do have really good instruction manuals. It's just seeking out people like you who've consolidated the information and put it together and then can be like, here you go, do this. And it does truly make all the difference.
And a lot of people don't wanna apply a lot of the things that we recommend, and I just like, "I dare you. Go ahead and try it and tell me that it doesn't work," you know? Because, it seems like an extra thing to add to your plate, but it really just takes, 30, 60 seconds to really make an impact. So I wanna back up a little about was there ever a moment or, like a buildup where something in you, you know, in your from your story, was there something in you where you knew things had to change? I mean, how did you because that's what people ask me all the time. How did you know anything different? How did you know something needed to happen? I mean, that's easy enough for me, to answer, but I was just wondering what do you answer when people ask you, how did you know you needed to get help?
I'm kind of a bad example of this because mine was so advanced and so awful. There was no denial. Like, my addiction was all day, every day. I was so sick. There was no questioning it once it got to that point. Like, I was able to maintain, like I said, playing sports or doing school, and I would go out on the weekends and get too drunk and maybe embarrass myself, but then I could clean it up during the week. I mean, I did that for a long time. But when my addiction really took hold of me, I was not in denial. I wasn't kidding myself. I was suicidal. I was sick physically all the time. I don't know how I only got one DUI. It is like a miracle that I didn't hurt myself or somebody else. So there was no questioning. My life was completely unmanageable. So, even the times that I was able to go to work or anything, I knew how sick I was, and I knew that this was much bigger than me. So, when did that flip? I'm not I'm not certain, but it went from, "This is a bad problem," to, "Oh god, I'm gonna die." Like, that was the only spectrum that I felt. It's like, an average person, you would notice your relationships are suffering, whether that's with your kid, with your partner, with your boss. You would have a health scare. There might be something legally that happens. But depression, like all of these things that are horrific things, right? That we want to just hurry up and medicate and get away. These are symptoms telling us we're out of alignment. Like, your depression is there to serve you. It is there to show you that something needs healing, it needs attention, something is not working. Again, nature is miraculous. And so, it's like gut issues, insomnia, depression, any of these types of things, and massive anxiety. It's like, hey, we need to bring you back into center. And so a lot of the things that we discount or we just want to medicate and we want to just get on with our life, it doesn't work that way. I understand it. It's like, this takes a lot of time. I don't want to face this. I'm scared of what will happen. There's a million things that can come up self-sabotaging. I'm afraid I can't do it. It's terrifying a lot of times to acknowledge and admit this stuff, where that's where I'm almost lucky is I didn't have a choice. Mine was so bad.
Mm.
I couldn't pretend.
Well, and listen, you're like we talked about before, your body is going to try and communicate with you, not just with survival, but it's trying to tell you there's an issue here. And if you continue to ignore it, that's when you go to the unhealthy urges or behaviors. You're seeking comfort, you're seeking a temporary resolve. And, over time, if you keep ignoring it, it will affect your health, where it does become life threatening eventually. if you continue to ignore what your body is trying to tell you and your brain. And it's so sad to me when I talk to especially women that are just so successful. They have a beautiful family, a great career. They're doing all the things right that they've been told is right, but they're empty inside. They have no joy. They have no feeling. They just don't feel anything. They're like, you can tell me to listen to my body, but there's nothing there. But that took a long time to develop. That took a long time of ignoring the signals and the signs. What I find too, and I was going to ask you this, is when you do begin to heal, I mean, I felt this. I'm like, who am I without that version of my life? I was a little fearful, I guess, fear to rediscover who I really was all along, but I didn't believe it, right? I still was over here in this frame of mind, this mindset. Did you struggle with that at all with your identity?
You know what's interesting with me? I think some of it stems from potentially negative, I'm going to say negative coping mechanisms that I have, which is like disassociation, right? Or I was a chameleon and I would be whoever I needed to be to please the person in front of me. So I'm kind of wired to reinvent myself is my point. So these things that were probably negative at a lot of different points in my life, negative defense mechanisms actually served me when I got sober because I'm good at it. I'm accustomed to it. I was wired for it. So when it was like, oh my God, I was this crazy party girl and now I'm going to become somebody else, I actually thought it was sort of fun. Like I get to reinvent myself. And I just really leaned into it. It was exciting for me. And I've done that so many times during my life. I went from a successful business owner and university professor to sell everything and I'm just going to go be retired on the beach and I'll become this beach bum. And then I like doing that. Oh, nope, never mind. I'm going to move to Northern California. Now I'm going to have a family and my partner is the founder of a huge startup. And now I'll be this. So I enjoy it and I don't have to try to enjoy it. I just naturally do. But I would really encourage people if they're about to make a big change and they're feeling that fear of releasing that old identity is start playing with it. What if it's possible that this is actually super fun? What if it's possible that this goes off better than I could have ever imagined? It's totally possible that that life really didn't serve me anymore. And oh my God, what's going to come is going to be so great. See if there is any part of you that can be actually inspired by it instead of terrified by it.
I like that a lot because there are people that are afraid of change or just don't like it. They feel safe where they're at, and yet they're still joyless, empty inside, and they don't know why. And if they're not willing to change, you've probably worked with a lot of people in this space for years. What do you think do you think it's fear that they misunderstand about change instead of looking at it from your perspective of joy and exciting? Have you run into a lot of people that are fearful of the change?
Yes. And I want to be clear too. I have fear. I just move anyway. I'm able to override it. I'm able to recognize it. And then I'm able to tap into what's also available, which is excitement. And it's like, remember that the brain doesn't really know the difference between nervous or excited. So if you can just keep tweaking the story a little bit and just slowly, you don't want to go from I'm terrified to this is going to be amazing because your nervous system's never going to stay regulated through that. But if you can just tweak it a little bit at a time, and just incrementally turn up that dial to whoa, what's possible? That's really great. But we are organisms that resist change. All organisms crave homeostasis, right? Which is we'll stay where we're comfortable, we'll stay where we know how to survive, even if it's dysfunctional. And yes, we get complacent in our life. And even though we know it's not working, especially as women, we may have stories of, yeah, but you don't leave or you need to think about everybody else before you. So it can be that. It can be just absolute terror of what's next. It can be lack of resources. So why we don't change, there's a million reasons. Sometimes there's a payoff to playing small too. You know what I mean? If you have some amazing business idea, yeah, there's risk, there's fear, like putting yourself out there, going all in on a dream, that's terrifying. And so there's a payoff to just being like, oh, I'll just stay where I am right here. So everybody's different, but it's so common. And sometimes we need to stay in that space a little bit longer as well. I mean, you'll listen to these motivational speakers and they're like, go all in, take the leap, doesn't matter if there's no net. And I'm like, that's insane. Like you should always have a plan B and make sure there's a net. And I believe that sometimes we need to remember that inaction is still an action, and we're affirming to our unconscious, a lot when we don't move. So I'm not saying stay there forever, but I do think that there's medicine in sitting in the unknown as well. Like we don't need to act so aggressively all the time. Sometimes that serves us, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we need to sit in the discomfort a little bit longer to actually make the change. And sometimes the change for me, what I've seen with myself and clients is like this is the timeline, right? And they're just not there yet. And so when it seems like, oh, they're not making a change and they're just sitting in it, they're actually just in the process before the change happens. So nothing is wasted. It's just all that needed to be there until this thing switched on inside of them. And so, it's also like, is somebody just lazy and afraid and not moving, or is it just not divine timing yet?
It falls into the world of where if people are waiting for motivation to do something, they're never going to do it. My feeling on motivation is it's like you said, you were fearful, but you did it anyway. So if you go and do the action, the motivation comes, after the action. A lot of people think motivation has to happen before the action, but I believe strongly. I mean, that's how I don't like working out. I don't like any form of exercise. It is the worst. I really have to make myself do it. And there are things that I do in order to accomplish that. But once I work out, man, I'm so motivated. I can't wait to go tomorrow. But tomorrow comes and, I'm struggling again with motivation. But I do feel more driven and motivated after I work out,
Well,
which is
that's
kind
it.
of
It's
crazy.
discipline and motivation. We can't just wait to feel like the thing or we're never going to make anything happen, which is so brilliant what you're saying. I mean, it's like that's where practices like get up and make your bed or journal every morning. Little things that we maybe don't want to do that we do. You are training the muscle of overriding the I don't want to. And we need to be able to do that because so much of any change is just doing the thing even though you don't feel like it. And energy begets more energy, and you need to stay in motion in order to feel motivated, So you may not be ready to leave the marriage. You may not be ready to check yourself into treatment yet or this big jump off the cliff moment. But every single day, you should absolutely be doing things that bring you closer into who you are becoming. You have to disrupt patterns. If your life is stuck and stagnant and it's not working, little tweaks, little disruptions in behaviors and the way you respond or get up and eat something different today or take a different road to work, like you have to start creating the availability of new pathways.
Yes. And you know what comes to my mind? It's so strange that this popped in my head. But when I was like almost 300 pounds, I drank Dr. Pepper like water. I mean, I would drink on it all day long and I loved it. And so someone said, why don't you drink the diet soda? Move it from real Dr. Pepper to a diet Dr. Pepper. And I said, I just hate the way it tastes. And this one girl, I'll never forget this. She says, you know what I did, Pam, is I just slowly over time, she said, I added to a full, a half glass of the real Dr. Pepper and about this much diet soda. And then every few days she would increase the diet soda so that, eventually there was no more real Dr. Pepper left, and she had adjusted to the new taste over in small steps. It's just small intentional steps. And whatever it is we're trying to do, you don't have to do it all in one day.
Well, and
Took you a
that's the
while to get there.
fake it till you make it, which I actually really like. And there's a lot of people that will push back on that, but I love that. It's like, imagine who you are becoming. How does she think? How does she feed herself? Who does she hang out with? What does she do tonight? And start really tapping into who you are becoming early on, and then make those small little changes along the way, because you know, it's like death by a thousand cuts, right? Like, still gonna bleed out. It's a bad analogy, but like when you make these tiny little, because you're building the energy of, I'm someone who shows up for myself, even if it seems in insignificant ways. It all matters. Huge.
I think when I first started working on this framework of Delay the Binge, I'll never forget. It's like I thought when I was trying the coaching, right? I thought everybody's life, they have such a unique life, and their issues and their struggles are all so different. How am I going to apply one framework to all these different scenarios? And I really struggled with that for a while. And, I kept asking experts like you, do you see common patterns in people, even when their stories look completely different? And how do you handle that? But you have to step outside of those things and keep the framework steady and apply it in small ways to their unique situation. But I was just wondering if you saw that a lot too in your line of work.
I mean, there is a bunch of basic things that just need to happen, and then you can tweak accordingly. So, I mean, that's like the fact that you put together and consolidated all these things that we know will help you. And here's an instruction manual and a step by step that everyone can follow. It's like, by all means, do that, and these things will help. And then it's like encouraging people to take these practices and tweak them and morph them into what best serves them. Like, I think there's something to be said though for saying, hey, do this exactly, because especially when we're early in sobriety or whatever change we're going to make, we don't have the capacity to make good decisions, or the energy or the wherewithal or the knowledge to know how to tweak things ourselves yet. So it's so important that we just take the instruction, we stay humble, and we do what somebody has laid out before us. But then the flexibility is what comes in, and it's great when you get to take these different ideologies or practices or things and then be like, what serves me best? What can I cut back on? And then you become more of the authority and the parent, in the relationship, and making. But God, to have somebody take the guesswork out, especially early in sobriety, is so important, because it's like, oh my God, if I would have been left to my own, devices early on, that would not have been good. That's what got me there.
Well, and it's a tool, right? That's been my thing lately is all these tools that people are using for whatever the issue is. It could be therapy, it could be bariatric surgery, it could be the GLP-1s or a pill to help you get your mind off food. Whatever the tool is, people they expect the tool to do the work. The tool is consistently the same, but your life is different and unique. And so you have to learn how to bypass the tool so that you don't have to have it forever. But I think a lot of people think the tool is forever and it's going to do all the work.
Well, and sometimes we think, oh, I just need to stop drinking, or I just need to lose weight. And then what you find is you do those things and you're still unhappy. You're still unfulfilled. There's like much deeper layers to the work. So it's like, sure, you can take a shot and lose the weight. Great. But have you really healed spiritual, emotional, soul within you that needs attention beyond just shedding weight, So it's really important. I think too, these tools are great, but it's like, there's so much deeper inner work. And we hear it all the time with alcoholism, right? The dry drunk, the person that just stops drinking, but is still an asshole, and is still doing all the same behaviors, but you're just sober doing it. That's what we don't want. Yeah.
I'm almost done with my next book. It is called Delay the Binge, but my publisher keeps getting upset with me because I keep adding to last week I added a chapter and it's called Tools Are the Pause. The tool is the pause. That's all it is. So, I mean, it's ever growing. It's evolving constantly as I learn from everyone that I connect with. I keep learning more and more. And pretty soon it's going to be a book this big and I'll never publish it. Just keeps growing. Well, yeah. And I'm excited about it. It's just, there's so much I learn and want to share. And well, let's get back on becoming before we close. I just really wanted your take and your view and your feeling on it because, I mean, do you think becoming is about changing or just remembering who you are?
I love this story of the Statue of David. When that was created, nobody had ever seen anything like that. I mean, it was like unbelievable. And so the story goes when the sculptor was interviewed and they said, "Oh my God, how did you create something so magnificent? This is so beautiful." He said it was easy. "I just chipped away the parts that aren't angel." And so from my perspective, it's more about it's not becoming something else because we are all born innately lovable and beautiful and exactly as we are meant to be, but we take on all this crap that doesn't belong there. So it's more about chipping away the parts that aren't angel and revealing that, which is so precious and whole and complete.
That is amazing. I love that. I always tell people, because everyone's had a different definition or a different meaning for what becoming is for them or what it has been for them. It's ever evolving. We are always evolving, but we're never a completely different person. For me, becoming is most apparent when I'm helping others, right? We're built for connection. And I think that some people have to remind themselves about kindness and about doing for others in a selfless way. But the more I try to help anyone, whether it's one person or 100, the better I feel about who I am, or I'm even finding myself through that action. Do you think something shifts when people stop focusing on themselves and start helping others?
Yeah, that ability to pay it forward and to connect and to guide, um, there's no greater sense of purpose, which I do think we are so deeply seeking in our life. I love the book Man's Search for Meaning, and for anyone that hasn't read it,
Oh,
this man is in an internment camp during the Holocaust, and he's watching everyone around him die and suffer and be withheld food. It's like the worst atrocities you could ever imagine, of course. And what he noticed was there's two groups of people: those that wanted to help and serve others and would give somebody else their last piece of bread because that person was going to die. They were happy even in the most atrocious circumstances because they were in love with themselves and their fellow man. Their hearts were open. They had meaning. They had purpose. It was like, we're in this together. And then there were the people that were like, "I'll kill you for my last piece of bread," and they were just all about survival. And they were all about, like, "I'm just going to get one more moment." And they were miserable and they
yeah,
were awful. It was terrible. Right. And
right.
so it's this idea that, yes, connection, meaning purpose, our hearts being open, create a life that you can keep your heart open in. Like, that's really, to me, like the point of it all, And if you build this successful $1 million a year business, but you're stressed all the time, your heart is closed, you have no time for other people, is that really success? So it's being very mindful of what it is that we want and tailoring our life to where we can stay open-hearted and give back and connect. And that really is a beautiful, meaningful life.
That is so beautiful. I couldn't have said it any better. You said it perfectly. So that's exactly what I was asking for. If someone is listening right now and they feel that quiet sense of something's off, I don't know why I don't feel anything, or I'm numbing out, or any of that, what would you want them to hear?
It's really their own inner voice, which is taking the time to get still and hands on your heart, your belly, really connect to your inner world. And it's like, if you are feeling something you don't want to feel, or you are not feeling, because a lot of times apathy is the worst. It is the absence of feeling, which is horrific when we are numb to our life. It's like, get still and drop in. And what would you have me know? What would you have me know? How is this showing up for me? Like, how is this here to serve me? This numb, or this pain, or this anxiety, like every emotional experience has a message, but we have to get quiet and we have to listen. And it may not come right away, and that's okay. Again, it's baby steps. It's the process of like, hey, I'm not abandoning you. I'm here and I'm listening. And start creating a relationship with yourself of like, I want to get to know you. Instead of, we talk about these symptoms a lot of times, like my depression, like it's outside of me, or my IBS, it's happening to somebody else. It's like, no, we need to be in deep relation with ourselves and what's happening. And it's like, hey, I want to get to know you. How are you here to serve me? That is where I would start. And again, you may not hear it initially, and that's okay. Come back. It's an act of a ritual of practice of dropping in, and I'm right here and I'm listening, and just keep showing up for yourself. And then that whisper will come, and then that knowing will come, and you will get direction.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I think that the listeners will really love that. It is good to be reminded of how we can actually start listening to ourselves, to our own views, our own opinions, our own thoughts. Like when we're laying down in bed to go to sleep at night, that's who you are, when you're alone. So let's remind the listeners how to find you and your amazing work.
Thank you. I'm really active on social media, so at Jo Weatherford. And then my website is recoveryremix.com.
Thank you so much for your time. There's a difference between trying to become someone else and learning how to come back to yourself. And what Jo shares, what she shared with us today is that's what it looks like. It's not perfect, it's not polished, but it's real. And if this conversation meant something to you, share it with someone who needs it. We'll see you in the next Becoming episode. Thanks for being here.